The dust swirled across the empty plains as the cattle moved slowly toward the creek. A rancher, hardened by years of isolation, rode alongside them. He had fought storms, bandits, and hunger, but nothing compared to the night when 3 tribal women had saved him from certain death. It was a memory etched deep, one that returned to him as the auctioneer's voice rang in the town square. Shackled and humiliated, the same women stood on the platform, their eyes heavy but unbroken, reminding him of the bond they once shared. He remembered the ambush vividly. Outlaws had cornered him in a narrow canyon, bullets whistling past his ears. His horse had gone down and he had been left bleeding against the rocks. Darkness had almost claimed him when 3 shadows emerged, tribal women moving silently, their faces streaked with dust and determination. They dragged him away from danger, treating his wounds with herbs and whispered prayers. Without them, he would have bled out before dawn, another nameless grave on the unforgiving frontier. In the auction square, men jeered, waving their dollars as though lives were commodities. The rancher's jaw tightened. He had seen too much. Cruelty on the frontier, too many broken people reduced to mere bargains. These women were not strangers to him. They were saviors. As the crowd laughed and the auctioneer raised his hand, the rancher pushed forward, his boots hitting the wooden boards. His voice cut through the noise with unshakable resolve. "Stop! I'll buy those 3 women. Without them, I'd be dead." The crowd fell silent for a moment, surprised by the declaration. Whispers rippled through the gathering. Why would a man of his stature admit such vulnerability? The rancher ignored their stares, his weathered hand dropping a heavy pouch of coins on the table. The auctioneer, stunned but greedy, accepted quickly. Chains were undone, and the 3 women stepped down, their eyes meeting his with a mixture of shock, gratitude, and wariness. They had not expected to see him again, let alone be claimed by his voice. Leading them from the square, the rancher felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. These women had once given him life when it was slipping away, and now fate had twisted to place theirs in his hands. The townsfolk muttered, suspicious of his intentions. Some thought him foolish, others whispered of scandal. Yet he paid them no mind. The memory of their hands pressing against his wounds, their chants under the cold stars, was stronger than any gossip. He owed them more than money could repay. On the long ride back to his ranch, silence lingered between them. The prairie stretched endlessly, the sun sinking low. Finally, one of the women spoke softly in her native tongue, a word he remembered from his time of healing. "Brother." The sound pierced him. They had saved him not for gain, but from a belief that life, even a stranger's, was worth protecting. His throat tightened. He realized they had trusted him with his life. Now he must earn theirs. When they reached the ranch, the women hesitated at the threshold. It was not freedom, but neither was it a cage. The rancher opened the door wide and stepped aside, allowing them to choose. They entered cautiously, their steps deliberate, their eyes scanning the walls filled with simple tools and blankets. No chains, no locks, just shelter. For the first time in years, the ranch that had echoed with loneliness now carried voices, soft and unfamiliar, yet comforting, like the sound of rain after a drought. The following weeks changed everything. They worked the land beside him, not as prisoners but as equals. They cared for the cattle, cooked meals over open flames, and repaired fences battered by storms. Their laughter, quiet at first, grew stronger with each passing day. For the rancher, it was as if life had returned to the barren soil of his heart. The land thrived under their presence, and so did he. They were not burdens, they were strength. He began to see them as partners, not possessions. Yet peace was fragile on the frontier. One night, under a sky streaked with firelight, outlaws came again, seeking revenge for past encounters. Gunfire shattered the silence. The rancher fought fiercely, But it was the three women who turned the tide. Using bows and knives hidden from their homeland, they struck with precision and courage, defending the ranch that had reluctantly become their own. When the smoke cleared, the ground bore scars of violence, but life remained. The rancher stood, in awe, humbled once more by their courage. Afterward, he spoke to them by the campfire. "I don't own you," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "You are free to leave whenever you wish." They exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable in the glow of flames. Then the eldest among them shook her head. In halting words, she answered, "You did not chain us. You gave us shelter. Here we choose to stay." For the rancher, it was not relief he felt, but an overwhelming sense of belonging that washed over him like dawn. Seasons passed, and the ranch grew prosperous. Travelers who passed by noticed the unusual household, a white rancher living in harmony with three tribal women, working side by side. Whispers turned into stories, stories into legends. Some mocked him, others admired him, but none could deny the truth. Something rare had been built there. It was more than survival. It was a union of lives that should have remained divided, bound instead by trust, gratitude, and the stubbornness of the human spirit. The rancher often thought back to that canyon where he had nearly died. Had fate not placed those women in his path, he would never have lived to see this life unfold. He owed them everything: the land's renewal, the laughter in his home, the peace that settled in his chest each night. They had not only saved his body, they had saved his soul. And so, when asked by strangers why he had bought them, he always answered the same way: "Because they gave me back my life." Years later, when the rancher walked the fields at dusk, he saw them moving gracefully through the grass, their voices mingling with the wind. The prairie no longer seemed empty. In their company, he had found not just survival, but meaning. The frontier was harsh, and tomorrow held no guarantees, yet he no longer faced it alone. Their story had begun with blood and chains, but it had become a tale of freedom and belonging, one the land itself seemed to remember in its silence. He never claimed them as property, never bound them with contracts or words of ownership. Instead, he offered respect, and in return, they gave him loyalty. Together they built something no auction could sell, no coin could measure. It was not love in the ordinary sense, nor duty bound by law, but something deeper, a kinship forged in fire, healed in trust, and carried forward in unspoken vows. That was the true treasure the rancher had gained when he said, "Stop. I'll buy those women." And so the ranch stood, weathered but enduring, a place where lives once torn apart had mended into something whole. Travelers would pass and see the strange household, whispering tales around campfires of the rancher who bought women not to chain them, but to honor them. The truth was simpler, humbler. He had once been broken, and they had saved him. In return, he gave them freedom. Together, they carved a sanctuary out of the wilderness, proving that even in the harshest land, humanity could still be found.